So let's go ahead and look at this next clip. This is a little bit more of President Trump's commentary on it. And there were some people in the media that had some issues with this as well. We'll point them out in just a moment.
He died after running into a dead-end tunnel, whimpering and crying and screaming all the way.
Yeah!
The compound had been cleared by this time, with people either surrendering or being shot and killed. 11 young children were moved out of the house and are uninjured. The only ones remaining were Baghdadi in the tunnel, and he had dragged 3 of his young children with him. They were led to certain death. He reached the end of the tunnel as our dogs chased him down. He ignited his vest, killing himself and the 3 children. His body was mutilated by the blast. The tunnel had caved in on it in addition. The thug who tried so hard to intimidate others spent his last moments in utter fear, in total panic and dread, terrified of the American forces bearing down on him. Terrorists who oppress and murder innocent people should never sleep soundly, knowing that we will completely destroy them.
Amen.
These savage monsters will not escape their fate, and they will not escape the final judgment of God.
Preach, Trump.
Baghdadi has been on the run for many years, long before I took office. But at my direction, as Commander-in-Chief of the United States, we obliterated his caliphate 100% in March of this year. Today's events are another reminder that we will continue to pursue the remaining ISIS terrorists to their brutal end. That also goes for other terrorist organizations. They are likewise in our sights. Baghdadi and the losers who worked for him, and losers they are, they had no idea what they were getting into. Baghdadi was vicious and violent, and he died in a vicious and violent way as a coward, running and crying.
Get him.
Last night was a great night for the United States and for the world. A brutal killer, one who has caused so much hardship and death, has violently been eliminated. He will never again harm another innocent man, woman, or child. He died like a dog. He died like a coward.
Mm-hmm.
The world is now a much safer place.
All right, so here's the thing. There are a lot of things, there are a lot of responsibilities that the president has that when they come around, I'm like, oh gosh, Trump's going to screw this up. That happens on a fairly regular basis with me. I mean, when it comes to sometimes meeting foreign leaders, when it comes to being a dignitary of certain things, sometimes depending on the content of the speech in certain speeches, when it comes to things that are really formal, like the State of the Union, sometimes I just look at that stuff with dread and like, oh gosh. Because let's be honest, Trump's a very unusual president, and because of that, some of the things he does are unusual, and sometimes unusual is good, and sometimes unusual is bad. There is not a human being on earth I would rather have talking about the death of a terrorist than President Trump. There's a lot of things the president has to do that I wish that we had somebody other than President Trump to do it for us. But when it comes to this specifically, talking about how terrorists died, there is not a better, more qualified person on this planet than President Trump. I mean, you heard him talking about just how big of losers they are, how they died like a dog, the gruesome details of their demise. Good. I want America's enemies to hear this. I want them to have a mental image conjured up in their head of guys like al-Baghdadi running for their lives, screaming like a little girl with dogs and the American military hot on his heels and killing him as he dies like a coward. I want that mental image in people's heads. That is as good a rendition of a mission like that I think you will ever hear. And when it comes to this, I want the terrorists that are currently terrorists to hear that and rethink their life and think about what they're doing. And I also want people that are potential terrorists who are thinking about maybe becoming radicalized and going over to join ISIS, whether they're in Europe or Asia or wherever they may be, or right here in the United States of America. I want them to have the president's speech in the back of their mind. I want them to be thinking about how al-Baghdadi met his end in as much detail as humanly possible. Heck, I almost wish that they would release the tape. If it weren't for the kids and their lives being lost in the process, being murdered by their own father, I'd say go ahead and release the tape. The fact that the kids were involved are the only reason that I'm somewhat hesitant to do so. Because I don't know that I could watch kids being killed by their own father. I mean, that's horrific. But the other stuff, yes, 100%. And I know that there have been people in the media, there's been people on the left that are trying to be critical of this, saying that it was the wrong approach, that he shouldn't have given this much detail. One of their points that I've seen that's really popular is, well, talking about it like this is going to spark some kind of retaliation. Well, here's the thing. Us killing the guy is going to spark retaliation no matter what. This happens every single time a terrorist leader is killed. There's always some kind of retaliation from the group. They always get a little bit more bold. They're trying to prove that the leader being gone hasn't clipped their wings, as it were. And so the death itself is going to cause retaliation regardless of what we say about it or how we handle it. You're living in a fantasy world if you believe that that is not the case. And so, yeah, retaliation is going to happen. But whether or not Trump handles it with kid gloves or gives the description that he just did, that's not going to embolden them any more than they already were. They're terrorists. They're already pretty bad people that hate America. I mean, these are people that train to suicide bomb themselves in the name of injuring America and the American people. They're not people that are going to be like, you know what, now we really extra super duper hate America. They already kind of super duper hate America. And so I see that as kind of a moot point. Another one is, well, this makes al-Baghdadi into a martyr. No, it doesn't. If anything, it does the exact opposite. Because now, instead of him dying for his religion, doing so in calm silence or anything like that, like you think of the martyrs of the Bible, for example, men like Jesus or Stephen or Paul or Peter or the Apostle James, and the ways that they died, whether through biblical history or secular history, they die in some kind of quiet solace. They do so understanding that this is a price that they pay for their religion. None of them run away cowering in fear and using children as human shields. That's the exact opposite of a martyr. And so giving all of this detail actually does the opposite of making him into a martyr. It shows him for what he really is, a disgusting, filthy coward that took out his own children with him in an effort to spare his own miserable life. That's who al-Baghdadi is. You know what might make him into a martyr, though? Trying to talk about him as though he is just some kind of austere religious scholar at the helm of a religious state. Trying to talk about him as this peaceful pacifist that was just somebody who was an expert in the Quran. That kind of crap will make somebody into a martyr. Talking about who he really is does the opposite. And then finally, another counterpoint that I know that you're going to hear. Well, why did Trump have to include the details about the children? This one, I do think there is some validity and there's some genuine tenderness from those on the left not wanting to hear about the children in this situation dying. Look, I'm sympathetic to that one. I get that argument because the way that they met their end is absolutely horrible. But the reason it's important to be honest about it, to show the details and to show the truth, is the same reason that we do this with, for example, the shooter in Parkland or the shooters of different schools around here, to show the kind of person, the kind of malice and evil that really resides in their hearts. This is a man that murdered 3 of his own children. And people need to know that that's the kind of person that was running ISIS. So as horrible and gruesome as it is to think about that detail of the story, it's a story that needs to be told. Because it is a story that perfectly captures the kind of man that al-Baghdadi is. A coward. And one that saw other people as pawns to be used for his own protection. You see, I want people that are contemplating maybe going and fighting for ISIS to think about, if this man is willing to kill his own children to try to save his own skin, maybe this is a guy that wouldn't think twice about sacrificing me. That's a question that I want these people to be thinking about. It shows what a piece of human filth this guy was. And that is something that I commend President Trump on doing. Look, President Trump is iffy on his best day on some things that he has to do as president. This ain't one of them. That last clip perfectly epitomizes why there is nobody on this planet that could have done a better job explaining that than President Trump. Now, he's going to have bad days in his presidency coming up, and I intend to be as critical of him as I would be with anybody else. I'm going to try to call balls and strikes when it comes to that. But on this, I've got no notes, no scruples, nothing to criticize the president on. He did as good a job on this as I think anybody could have. End of story. Just in case you were wondering, yes, I am a straight white Christian male and a small government constitutionalist, which means I have no chance of getting any help from the government and wouldn't accept their help even if they offered. Which means I'm going to need you to like and subscribe because my gun collection is not going to pay for itself.